The restaurant was a picture of sophistication. Soft jazz music floated through the air, mingling with the quiet hum of conversations and the occasional clink of fine china. Chandeliers cast a golden glow over polished wooden tables, each set with pristine white linens and gleaming silverware. This wasn't just a place to eat, it was a place to be seen. Mark and Lisa walked in, their designer outfits and air of self-assurance making heads turn. Mark's tailored suit and Lisa's sparkling jewelry caught the light as they strode confidently toward the hostess stand. They were used to this kind of setting, exclusive, elegant, and catering to people like them. The hostess greeted them warmly, guiding them to their table by the window, a prime spot overlooking the city lights. As they sat down, Lisa adjusted her diamond bracelet, her eyes scanning the room with a practiced coolness. Moments later, Daniel approached their table. His uniform was immaculate, his demeanor polite and professional. "Good evening," he said with a warm smile, his voice carrying a gentle accent that hinted at a faraway homeland. "Welcome to Le Grand Étoile. May I start you off with some drinks?" Mark and Lisa exchanged a glance, the corners of Mark's mouth twitching upward in a barely concealed smirk. Lisa's perfectly arched eyebrows lifted slightly as she leaned back in her chair, her gaze lingering on Daniel for a moment too long. "Purr," Mark said, his tone casual but edged with something sharper. "You've got quite the accent there." Lisa chuckled softly, covering her mouth with her hand. "It's charming," she added, though her voice dripped with condescension. Daniel's smile faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered, maintaining his composure. "Thank you, ma'am," he said politely, pen poised to take their order. The couple glanced at each other again, their silent exchange full of amusement, as if sharing a private joke. They didn't seem to notice, or care, how their behavior might have come across. Unfazed outwardly, Daniel patiently waited for their drink preferences, his professionalism unshaken. Around the restaurant, life went on as usual, but for Daniel, this interaction was already shaping the tone of the evening. Daniel returned to the table with a notepad in hand, his expression calm and professional. "Are you ready to order, or would you like more time?" he asked politely, his soft accent weaving through the words. Mark leaned forward, his smirk widening. "We'll order now," he said, glancing at Lisa with a conspiratorial look. Lisa picked up the menu, her manicured fingers tracing the edge as she studied it with exaggerated deliberation. "Let's see," she said slowly, drawing out her words. "I want the filet mignon." She emphasized the words deliberately, sneaking a glance at Mark, who suppressed a laugh. "Filet mignon," Daniel corrected gently, his tone neutral as he wrote down her choice. Lisa's eyebrows shot up and she chuckled, clearly enjoying herself. "Oh, so he does speak English. Maybe I should take lessons from you," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Mark joined in with a chuckle, shaking his head as if Daniel's accent were a charming but pitiful quirk. "Yeah, maybe brush up on that a bit. Make it easier for people to understand you." Daniel's grip on the pen tightened for just a moment, but his face remained composed. He nodded politely, refusing to let their words break his professional demeanor. "I'll be sure to improve," he said evenly. "And for you, sir?" Mark rattled off his order with an air of indifference, adding, "Make sure the steak is medium rare. And don't mix it up, all right? I'd hate to send it back." Lisa smirked, leaning toward Mark. "Hopefully he gets it right the first time," she said, loud enough for Daniel to hear. Daniel wrote their orders without comment, his head slightly bowed. His posture remained poised, but the slightest slump in his shoulders betrayed the sting of their words. "Thank you," Daniel said quietly, straightening as he collected their menus. "Your food will be out shortly." As he walked away, Mark and Lisa exchanged another smirk, their laughter low but audible. Around them, the restaurant continued to buzz with conversation and activity, oblivious to the small scene of mockery that had just unfolded. Meanwhile, Daniel disappeared into the kitchen, his heart heavy, but his resolve unbroken. This wasn't the first time he'd endured such treatment, and he knew it likely wouldn't be the last. Still, he reminded himself of the values that guided him: dignity, kindness, and strength. He wouldn't stoop to their level. Not tonight. Not ever. As Daniel retreated to the kitchen, his mind briefly wandered to the journey that had brought him here. He wasn't just a waiter in a high-end restaurant. He was a man who had fought hard for every inch of progress in his life. Years ago, Daniel had left his home country with nothing but a small suitcase and a heart full of hope. Back home, opportunities were scarce, and he had family depending on him. A younger sister pursuing her education, an ailing mother in need of care, and a father whose small shop barely made ends meet. When Daniel arrived in this new country, he barely spoke the language and took on any work he could find. Construction during the day, janitorial shifts at night, and now, working as a waiter at one of the city's most prestigious restaurants. Every dollar he earned was carefully divided, some for his family, some for living expenses, and the rest for a dream he held close to his heart. That dream wasn't about luxury or material wealth. It was about building something meaningful, a small cafe where people from all walks of life could come together. A space where he could share the flavors of his homeland and the lessons of his journey. Daniel's path hadn't been easy. He had faced more than his share of prejudice and ridicule. Moments like these, when people like Mark and Lisa mocked his accent or questioned his abilities, reminded him of how far he'd come. Still, he refused to let bitterness take root. His parents had taught him that respect and kindness were more valuable than any wealth. They had always said, treat people with dignity, even if they don't offer it to you in return. That's what makes you strong. As he prepared to return to the dining area, Daniel took a deep breath, letting the hurt from Mark and Lisa's words wash over him and away. He knew their behavior said more about them than it did about him. With a calm resolve, he straightened his uniform and stepped back onto the restaurant floor. No matter how others chose to act, Daniel would always choose professionalism and grace. He wouldn't let their small-mindedness overshadow the pride he felt in the life he was building and the dreams he was chasing. For Daniel, every interaction, good or bad, was another step forward. And while Mark and Lisa might not see it, Daniel knew who he was and what he stood for. That was all that mattered. As the evening unfolded, the quiet ambiance of the restaurant was punctuated by Mark and Lisa's voices, rising above the soft hum of other conversations. Their laughter rang out frequently, drawing attention from nearby tables, though not for the right reasons. "Did you see the villa in Capri I sent you?" Lisa asked, her tone loud and unmistakably self-satisfied. "I think we should book it for the summer. I mean, what's the point of working so hard if we don't enjoy the best things in life?" Mark leaned back in his chair, grinning. "Absolutely. Life's too short to settle for anything less. Besides, we deserve it after all those investments finally paid off." Their conversation meandered from exotic vacations to luxury cars, from designer clothes to the custom renovations on their sprawling estate. Their words were deliberate, meant to showcase their success to anyone within earshot. When Daniel approached their table to refill their glasses, Lisa smirked and leaned toward Mark. "I wonder if he's ever even seen a private jet," she whispered, though her voice was loud enough for Daniel to catch. Mark chuckled, not bothering to hide his amusement. "Probably not. They don't exactly park those in his neighborhood." Daniel, ever composed, poured their water without faltering, offering a polite nod before stepping away. Their mocking didn't stop there. The next time Daniel came by to check on their meal, Lisa exaggerated her words, speaking slowly and over-enunciating each syllable. "Food is delicious," she said with a patronizing smile, glancing at Mark to gauge his reaction. Mark laughed, shaking his head. "It's like teaching a kid to read," he quipped, earning another round of laughter from Lisa. Around the room, other diners began to notice. A couple at a nearby table exchanged uncomfortable glances, their expressions a mix of disapproval and unease. A group of friends at another table whispered among themselves, their eyes darting toward Mark and Lisa. But no one said anything, choosing instead to look away and avoid confrontation. Daniel, however, carried on with quiet dignity, his movements steady and deliberate. Each time he walked away, his head was held high, refusing to let their words diminish his self-worth. Mark and Lisa, oblivious to the growing discomfort around them, continued their loud, boastful chatter, laughing and basking in their own perceived superiority. They didn't notice the tension their behavior created, or the respect Daniel silently commanded from those who witnessed his grace under pressure. As the evening wound down, Mark and Lisa leaned back in their chairs, looking thoroughly pleased with themselves. The empty plates and glasses on the table were a testament to their indulgent meal, one they'd loudly praised at every course. Mark glanced at his watch. "Where's the check? I want to get out of here before the valet line gets too long," he said, tapping the table impatiently. Just then, Daniel approached with a steady, purposeful stride. He held a small leather folder in his hand, but unlike earlier, there was a calm determination in his expression. "Excuse me, sir, ma'am," Daniel began, his voice even and professional. He placed the folder gently on the table. "Your meal has been taken care of." Mark and Lisa exchanged puzzled glances. Lisa laughed lightly, assuming Daniel had misspoken. "What do you mean, taken care of? We didn't give anyone our card yet." Mark smirked, leaning forward. "Are you saying the restaurant is comping our meal? Did the manager finally recognize who we are?" Daniel shook his head, his smile faint but genuine. "No, sir, I paid for your meal myself." For a moment, there was silence as Mark and Lisa stared at him, unsure if they'd heard correctly. Then Mark chuckled, waving a hand dismissively. "Come on, you're joking, right? This is some kind of prank?" Lisa joined in, her laughter sharp and incredulous. "Seriously? You paid for our meal? That's a good one." Daniel stood quietly, his gaze steady, waiting for their amusement to fade. When it became clear he wasn't joking, their laughter faltered, replaced by confusion. "You're serious?" Mark asked, his tone now laced with disbelief. "Yes, sir," Daniel replied simply. "I wanted to show my gratitude for your visit tonight." Mark and Lisa exchanged another bewildered look, still struggling to process what they'd just heard. Around the room, a few diners had begun to notice the exchange, their curiosity piqued by Daniel's unexpected gesture. Mark leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "And why would you do that?" he asked, his tone skeptical, almost defensive. Daniel's answer was calm, yet it carried a quiet weight. "Because I believe kindness should never be dependent on how we're treated in return." As Mark and Lisa sat frozen in confusion, Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. The soft rustle of bills being counted echoed in the quiet space between them, drawing even more attention from nearby tables. With deliberate calmness, Daniel counted out the total amount of their extravagant bill, each bill landing on the table with a faint but resolute sound. When he finished, he tucked the envelope away and neatly arranged the stack of cash in front of them. "I've paid for your meal," Daniel said, his voice steady and composed. "Consider it a gesture of kindness." Mark's eyes darted from the cash to Daniel, his smug confidence slipping into confusion. "Wait, you're serious?" he stammered, his tone almost incredulous. Lisa's hand hovered near her glass, her face frozen in disbelief. "But why would you do that?" she asked, her usual haughty tone replaced with genuine discomfort. Daniel's expression softened, but his words were firm. "Because kindness doesn't depend on how someone treats me. It's something I choose to give, regardless." The weight of his words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Mark and Lisa, so accustomed to being the ones in control, now found themselves at a loss for what to say. The arrogance that had carried them through the evening had dissolved, leaving behind only awkward silence. Other diners, now fully aware of the situation, watched with quiet fascination. Some exchanged knowing glances, their respect for Daniel evident. For Mark and Lisa, the stack of cash on the table seemed to mock their earlier behavior. The man they had ridiculed and dismissed had not only shown them grace, but had also outclassed them in a way they couldn't ignore. Lisa opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his earlier bravado completely gone. They had expected to leave the restaurant feeling superior, but instead, they were leaving humbled and deeply unsettled. Daniel stood tall, his composure unwavering as he met Mark and Lisa's bewildered gazes. The couple, so full of confidence moments ago, now looked utterly lost, their faces a mixture of discomfort and quiet shame. With quiet dignity, Daniel spoke, his words calm but powerful. "Kindness and respect are free," he said, his accent carrying the weight of sincerity. "But they show the true wealth of a person. I hope this helps you understand that." Mark opened his mouth as if to respond, but no words came. Lisa glanced at the cash on the table, then back at Daniel, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. The usually sharp remarks she wielded so effortlessly were nowhere to be found. Daniel didn't wait for a reply. He gave them a polite nod, as if to say the matter was settled, and turned to walk away. His movements were unhurried, his posture graceful, as though the weight of their earlier ridicule had never touched him. Around the restaurant, the quiet admiration of other diners was palpable. Some exchanged approving looks, others nodded subtly in Daniel's direction. His act of generosity and the wisdom in his words had left an indelible mark. Not just on Mark and Lisa, but on everyone who witnessed it. Daniel returned to his duties without another glance at the table, carrying trays and checking on guests as if nothing unusual had happened. He wasn't seeking recognition or praise. His gesture had been genuine, a simple act of kindness meant to teach a lesson about the value of humanity over wealth. At their table, Mark and Lisa sat in silence, their extravagant meal now tasting bitter. Daniel's words echoed in their minds, forcing them to reflect on their behavior and the uncomfortable truth he had laid bare. For the first time that evening, they had no audience to impress, no one to mock. They were left alone with their thoughts, and the lesson Daniel had so gracefully imparted. Mark and Lisa sat in silence for a long moment, their once proud demeanor replaced by visible humility. They avoided meeting the gazes of those around them, the weight of Daniel's words still heavy in the air. Slowly, they gathered their belongings, their movements subdued, the earlier swagger gone. As they rose from their seats, Lisa cast one last glance toward Daniel, who was tending to another table with his usual quiet professionalism. Her lips parted, as if to say something, but no words came. She simply looked down and followed Mark toward the exit. The restaurant seemed to exhale as the couple left. The soft clinking of glasses and quiet conversation resumed, but there was a palpable change in the atmosphere. Several diners exchanged approving glances, some nodding toward Daniel in silent acknowledgement of his grace and strength. At one corner table, an older man whispered to his companion, "That's the kind of lesson money can't buy." Another guest murmured, "He handled it with so much dignity. It's inspiring." Daniel, ever composed, continued his work as if nothing extraordinary had happened. To him, this wasn't about proving a point or seeking validation. It was about living the values he held dear, even in the face of disrespect. As the evening carried on, the moment lingered in the minds of everyone who witnessed it. A quiet reminder of what truly matters. The narrator's voice closes the story with a poignant reflection. True wealth isn't in money or status. It's in the kindness and respect we show to others, no matter who they are or where they come from. And sometimes the simplest acts of grace can leave the deepest impressions. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart or gave you something to think about, we'd love to hear from you. Please like this video to show your support. Subscribe to our channel for more stories filled with emotion, inspiration, and life lessons. Comment below. Tell us what part of this story resonated with you, or share your own experiences. Share this video with friends and family who might need a little reminder about the power of kindness and humility. Your engagement helps us create more meaningful content. So thank you for being part of our community. Let's spread positivity together. Stay tuned for the next story. You won't want to miss it.